someone forgets to chat or you see something, just say, hey, there looks like a good question, and one of us can prompt each other.
Yeah.
And then I'll do the same thing for the stop sharing, Sarah.
Love it.
5 seconds. Well, thank you both so much. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. We are at the top of the hour, so we can go ahead and get started. Appreciate everyone joining. Thank you so much for joining us for Defying the Odds, Lessons Learned While Building Diverse SC and SC Leadership Teams with Sarah Lustenberger and Alfonso Franklin. My name is Kyle Bourne. I'm an account executive here at Consensus, and I will be your moderator for today's session. DemoFest is presented by Consensus. Consensus is leading the world into the new era of demo automation. Our platform gets your buyers what they need, when they need it. It then multiplies your revenue team's impact with unique insights on those buyers. As a result, you'll see faster close times, larger deals, and higher close rates. You can learn more at goconsensus.com or view the automated micro demo at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. Quick couple housekeeping items here before we get started. We encourage you to participate in today's session. On the right side of your console, you can see a few ways to engage with us throughout the session. The chat function will allow you to chat with us as well as the other attendees here today. Throughout the session, you'll also see a few polls. We encourage you to participate in these polls as your feedback is important to us. Our speakers will be taking questions from the audience at the end of the session. However, we encourage you to ask questions at any time through the Q&A box here. If at any time you are having technical difficulties, you can head to the gear on the bottom of your screen. Here you'll see a help document to help troubleshoot those common issues. Cool. Now we can get to the fun stuff. I'd now like to introduce our speakers, Alfonso and Sarah. Alfonso Franklin has led Sigma Computing's global solution engineering organization since joining the company in November 2019 and is a 20-year veteran of the analytics space. As a pre-sales leader, Alfonso has overseen both startup and large teams that are focused on technical selling processes and go-to-market strategy. Sarah is an extremely dedicated and passionate leader with over 30+ years working for technology companies including Google, Oracle, Salesforce, IBM, Cognos, and Information Builders. In her current role at Google, Sarah is leading the global SMB CE organization, helping customers everywhere understand the benefit of Google's cloud offerings. With that, I'll turn the rest of the time over to you both.
Thank you so much, Kyle. And I'll jump in and share our slides and kick off by thanking you, Kyle, Consensus, for allowing Alfonso and I to dive into this topic today. I'll start by saying, look, I know already that all of you are very, very smart people, and that's because you chose to attend our session. So I would imagine that you've already deduced that for me as a female and Alfonso as a Black male, that it is incredibly important to us, this idea to create diverse SE and SE leadership teams. It's personally, we're personally invested in doing just that. But there are so many more reasons why this is an important topic and something that we should all be striving for. When you bring in diversity, you bring in differences of thought, perspective, background, just styles of working. It creates a really enjoyable community internally within your organization to just bounce ideas off of, to collaborate on how you do every part of the SE or solution engineering role, right? And at the end of the day, it allows us to make stronger connections with our customers and our partners, internally, externally. There's so much value in having diverse teams. And ultimately, there's research after research that shows that it actually improves the performance of businesses. However, the reality is that's not, it's easier said than done to actually create these diverse SE and SE leadership teams. And that's why today, Alfonso and I wanted to, and I'll progress, talk to you a little bit about, from our perspective, Alfonso and I have known each other for what now, about 20 years. We've worked in 3 software companies together, and we've been each other's advocates, peers. We've talked through things, and we wanted to share some of what he and I typically share with each other in this session. We wanted to talk about everything from the challenges we faced, what we've done, where we've fallen short and not met our goals, and what we've learned along the way. And at the end of all of this, our goal is that you walk away with 2 to 3 concrete actions that you can take within your organization, whether you're an individual contributor or a leader. Alfonso wanted to let you share a little bit also about what we wanted to do today.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. And thank you for that great intro. And yes, 20 years is a long time, multiple software companies, multiple roles, and it's been great. But at the end of the day, right, it's about the diversity of teams. And if we're going to drive business success, we have to have a diverse set of thoughts. And with that diverse set of thoughts, it's going to drive the business in so many different ways. But at the end of the day, inclusion has to be at the core, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone has to have a seat at the table. And the reality is each of us, from a leadership standpoint and from an individual contributor standpoint, can make a difference in all of our organizations. And really, at the end of the day, at the core of this, it's DEI and B, but in long terms, it's diversity, equity.
You can say it.
Equity, inclusion, and belonging. So it's a mouthful, but at the end of the day, this is going to make organizations better and help us drive not only success for our customers, but also success for our teams and employees as well. Yep. And so at the end of the day, this session is meant to be interactive.
Yep.
And we really look forward to discussing how diversity can impact your solutions organizations.
Yep.
So thank you for making the time to join us today. And we're really, really excited to have this conversation. But before we get started, I want to talk about what we won't be covering today. And what we won't be covering today is how to coach or guide individuals on how to be hired or promoted in their SE roles.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we'd love to be invited back to Demo Fest to talk about that topic. And we won't be covering how you get hired, promoted today as well, because we need much more time than an hour.
Right. That's a whole separate conversation that we could spend hours just on that topic alone. This is really about how you, as we like to talk about it, how you recruit, how you ramp, how you retain, how you do the day job, which is building revenue, how you build relationships, how you do that, and how you do that with a diverse team, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So let's jump into it. I know you and I've talked a lot, and we really do believe that it really does all start with recruiting. 100%. You want to share some of your stories?
100%. It all starts with that first R, which is recruiting. And when you're building out these teams, I'll talk a little bit about some of the early days of Sigma. When I joined, we had 3 SEs on the team. Today, we're just over 40 on the team. And when we were that small core team and we were starting to build out the business, the reality was we had brought some really bright folks, but there was something missing. And I didn't even know it was missing until it happened. And so we hired a woman who came on board and really added a different view, a different lens to our business. And I had no idea because we didn't know, right? And so when she joined the organization, she would bring these diverse ideas of thought. What if we did the demo this way? What if we did the lead in this way? What if we did the tell, show, tell this way? And what if we worked with the sales reps and the sales leaders in a different way? And it was just this aha moment that I had, that it's this notion of diversity that really helps drive the business. And, you know, at the end of the day, we talk about ethnicity. Sarah, you brought that up earlier. I'm talking about gender diversity, but it's even more than that. It can be regional. It can be international, right? At the end of the day, diverse backgrounds, perspectives, thought processes, priorities, and even style can really drive the business. And so the first step is ultimately, I think you'll see a common theme here, is hire for diversity. And I'll pass it over to Sarah to share one of her stories.
Sure. So looking back over my career and the different companies, I remember a time, this is a couple of companies ago, where I was a third line leader and I had an opening for a second line leader. And at the time, I already had 2 gentlemen, white males, working for me. And there was an opportunity with this open role to hire and look for, as you said, diversity of thought, background, ethnicity, gender. Like, how do we add a mix, add something different into the mix? And because I knew that that was so important. But it was really, really hard to find candidates. I mean, there frankly just aren't enough candidates from diverse, from, as we said, gender, equity, ethnicity, backgrounds. There aren't enough. And so you and I have talked about this a lot, the idea that we have to get personally involved in the interview and the recruiting process. I mean, you and I have had sessions where we've gone on LinkedIn and scoured our networks. We've asked our friends and our friends of friends and our colleagues to provide candidates to us, right? Or do you know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who might be interested in the role, in order to truly build up that diverse pool of candidates? Even having said this, the situation that occurred, this is about 7 years ago, I just struggled to find diverse candidates. So at the time, I chose to take on that role. So I was the 3rd line leader, but I also took on the responsibilities of that 2nd line leader for a total of 6 months. And I had to be very clear that that was an intentional move that I was making. I had to get my leadership, my peers, my team actually bought in on that strategy. And I said, we need to wait until we can have a diverse pool of candidates to consider for this role. And it did take 6+ months to find candidates and really quality candidates. And in the end, we were able to hire a woman that, very similar to your story, Alfonso, really transformed the way our organization operated, and was truly added so much in terms of their perspective and their style that really transformed our group. So I think you and I have had multiple situations where we believe in, as I said, getting very involved in that recruiting process, in the interview process, right? Showcasing diversity to candidates so that they know that they won't be alone when and if they were to achieve a role, right? That's important. But even then, it can still be an uphill battle to find enough candidates. And I think this is where that we wanted to open it up to all of you and ask if you have, in fact, when you think of hiring and bringing in diverse candidates, what are the ways and what's the most effective mechanism for doing that? And so, Kyle, we'd love to open up this poll right now and ask and we've got a couple of options here. Is it unconscious bias training for your managers? Is it posting on diversity job boards? Is it partnering with professional organizations that represent the underrepresented? Is it including DEI and B in your stated values, or making it a priority where you really measure the outcomes? Or is it something else? And this is where we'd love to open it up and hear from all of you on what you've seen work. And then
I can see some folks are coming through the poll, so there's a few votes.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing because I know, Alfonso, that once we get some votes here, we're going to be able to share with everybody. And we really want to hear, okay, so partnering with minority-based professional organizations is jumping out as one of the top things. Again, I know you and I have both done that proactively with organizations, and there are a lot of them out there. I think we probably need to do a better job of also making those organizations known. When I think of internally at several of the last companies I've been part of, there's always ERG groups, that you can showcase your jobs if you want to post them internally. But as you said, I think there's even external organizations that you can share open roles with.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the ones I'm involved in currently is the Black Employee Network. And so I participated in that session in San Francisco about a month and a half ago. And it was just a really inspiring session. We had representation from some of the largest companies on the planet, right? And so at the end of the day, it was like-minded folks talking about like-minded topics around diversity. But what I found very, very interesting was the LinkedIn network that I broadened as part of that session. And it went everything from folks reaching out, asking if there were roles available. But one of the things I know you love as well, one of the big asks was mentoring.
Yep.
And so I'll be setting up and have set up some sessions with some of those folks that I met during those sessions. And so as much as I like to be mentored, right, and I continue to do that, I have folks that I get mentored by as well. I am the mentee, but I truly enjoy being able to mentor folks in various aspects of their career as they're growing their careers as well.
Yeah. And that's a big part of being able to attract candidates to your role, to your company. So, okay, let's stop sharing that and I'll go back to the presentation, because I think what we wanted to talk about now is it's more than just recruiting, right? It is important to think beyond the recruiting process. And in particular, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about some examples around what we call ramping, or training, enabling, building someone's skills up.
Yes, 100%. And ramping is an interesting component. Sarah and I at Salesforce, I recall just a hiring frenzy that we had, and really establishing some rules around hiring. And one of that was velocity. But if you're going to have velocity, you have to be able to ramp quickly as well. And we had something similar here at Sigma. I mentioned, we're a team of over 40, and they were all hired over the last 4 years, right? So that's a lot of growth, and we'll probably go 20% again this year. And so with that, one of the things that I think is critically important, and if you walk away with nothing else, you're always learning. And one of the things I'm continuing to learn, especially from a diversity standpoint, is different people learn differently. And so being a solution engineer, we came out with a rubric for onboarding here at Sigma. And we started with about 30 rows. And I'm sure some of the team will hear this or listening to this and have a little chuckle, but it was about 30 rows of task. And then it ballooned to 200. And then we've worked our way back, and it's about 60. But at the end of the day, some folks work really well with independent study, but other folks may be better suited for a boot camp or a blend. And so what we're learning is, and again, it's this notion of the one size fits all approach just doesn't work. And it can be cultural. It can be, again, it could be learning challenges. It could be anything. There's so many different components, right? And so understanding that you have to create a program that's going to be inclusive for all your employees is so critically important. And we always, again, I go back to this notion of diversity is always about, we always knee-jerk to ethnicity and gender, but it can be lifestyle, walk of life. There's just so many other components to that. And so that was my key takeaway from ramping, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then, you get them ramped. What do you have to do after you get them ramped?
Next?
You got to retain them, right? And so I think recognizing the three facets of solutions or solution engineering is critically important. The job is hard. You have the pressure of technology, and then you blend that with having business acumen around use cases. And then lastly, you need to be a seller. There needs to be a selling component of that as well. And so that can be daunting. And, I think of many years ago where I had this great team member that came on board and just was so overwhelmed. And we would just talk daily about the role, and I would check in with them often. And we both came to the conclusion together that solution engineering, though a great role, was not necessarily the best fit for this person. And for us who love this job, it's like, what do you mean? There's nothing else in solution. Like this is the best job in the world. And I still believe that, but it's not the best job in the world for everyone. So I think as allies, as ICs to IC, as peers, as leaders, understanding and helping people thrive. And just because they don't end up getting retained on your team, they may end up moving to a different role within the organization. And that's valuable as well, because you get to pay it forward and have them still be part of the nest, but in a way that they can thrive. And so that's one of the things I'm always constantly looking at with the team. Is one of the questions I ask in the interview process, like, do you love to present? And I had a candidate a number of years ago, I said, I love everything about the job but presenting. And so I added that question because, Sarah, how often do you present?
A few times over the course of a week or a month. Absolutely. It's a big part of the job.
Yeah,
and like 100%. You said, it's understanding each unique person that you're hiring, you're bringing on board, as you said, not just ramping, retaining them. What do you need to do to challenge them, to help people feel comfortable getting outside of their comfort zone? They may actually not lean into presenting, but maybe that's something that we can support them with, right? And that's, again, being open to adjusting your style, your leadership, your processes within your organization to allow for diversity, as you said, of backgrounds or styles or preferences in what they love about the job.
100%. And, you bring up the point of not loving to present. Well, one of the things I've seen be very successful is Toastmasters. And so we've had folks do Toastmasters. We've had people even do improv and get them outside of that comfort zone. And now those are some of the best presenters on the team. And so it's finding the perfect formula, if you will, that works for each individual. And that takes time. And that's why you don't skip the one-on-ones weekly, because those are critically important to figuring out that formula.
Yes, so true. So with that, I wanted to share a perspective on diversity when I call it revenue, that's the day job, working the opportunities, working the business, the strategy, whatever your go-to-market motion is. And that's also where, and you talked about, Alfonso, typically we can bring people in that have primarily a background as a practitioner. They might have a background in sales. I've seen some phenomenal individuals coming from sales into the pre-sales role. I've also hired plenty of people that have a background in technology, a background as a pre-sales individual. And when you bring all those different, like you said, the diversity, the different styles, the different backgrounds, that's when you create this incredible team where they can all supplement each other and help each other. And it makes us that much more effective when we're working an opportunity, or we're thinking about the business strategy for a given area of our business or a region or a territory, right? It's that diversity that makes us excel at this day job that is our responsibility to support the sales motion. Right. And I know you agree with that entirely. I know even you and I, when we've worked together, we have differences in how we think about the business and strategy. I'm always teasing Alfonso that he's all data, and I bring the people aspect to the conversation. And together, when we think about that, it ends up letting us enable our teams to kind of move between all the responsibilities of the role. And so it is really critical from a revenue standpoint, right?
Yeah, and it's that compliment. You just talked about it, right? I am all data. And you bring, I've softened up over the years, but
you have.
Right? You bring that softer side, and it's pausing, right? It's the job is busy, the job is daunting, but pausing, understanding how someone's doing. They may be crushing the number, but there may be something else that they're concerned about, right? It could be that promotion that they've been thinking about for the last 6 months, or it could be something personally. And so really creating this world of inclusion is so important, because we spend a lot of time together.
Yeah, a lot of time working, absolutely. So I also wanted to raise the idea of how diversity plays out in building relationships. And the reality is that is something that each and every person has their own style of building networks, building relationships, whether you're building it with your peers in your solution engineering, your SE group, or with your sales counterparts, or with partners, internally, externally. I often think of people accept roles and jobs because of the role itself. Maybe it's even the title, the opportunity, the compensation. That's why you accept and take a role, but people stay at a company based on the relationships they have. And so I think it's all of our responsibilities to how do we support people in building their networks, their relationships? How do you create environments? Even you've heard the term psychological safety. How do you create an environment where people feel like they can make true connections with their peers, with leadership, with other parts of the organization? Because as I said, it's those relationships that will keep people at your company. And so I think it's all of our responsibilities to help support and foster that relationship building.
Yeah. And
you agree?
yeah. And I know you mentioned, finding a mentor, it can be a little awkward.
Yep.
It's like cold calling. But I encourage everyone to do it. One of my mentors, she knows who she is. I won't name her, but she's out there, and there's a couple. And I remember reaching out to her. We didn't have a really strong relationship. She had a big organization, like, 900 SEs. Now she knows who she is. And, I had this small team, and I reached out to her when we were really small. It was like, we were like 10 SEs. And I said, hey, I just wanted to bounce something off you.
Yeah.
And now I believe we have this lifelong friendship that we'll continue to have. And I'll continue to bounce things off of her and look forward to doing it the same that I do with you. But it's challenging to go make that first call.
Yeah,
but,
it is.
Step outside your comfort zone. If you walk into a room, go walk over to that sales leader or to that salesperson, get to know them, because again, that's another component of diversity. They're going to bring a different slant. And, I always talk about the notion of empathy as SEs and how important that is with our customers, as well as internally with our sales folks.
With our peers.
And our product managers who are trying to build the product, and our engineers. And it really gets back to, at the end of the day, it's okay to just step out of that zone and learn something new from someone different. 100%.
Yeah, so much. Well, I want to jump to our next poll, and hopefully, Kyle, you've opened that up. We want to ask, have you all, as individual contributors or leaders within your organization, have you actually seen challenges in both building from a recruiting standpoint, but also cultivating and maintaining a diverse organization and team? And so we'd love to hear from all of you and see if this is something that maybe it's just Alfonso and I that are facing some of these challenges, but I would imagine there's a few more out there that are also facing it. So we'll give everyone a moment. And Alfonso, when you're ready. Okay, there we go. So far we've got 100% yeses. So we are not alone, Alfonso.
That's good.
In thinking that this is a reality, that it doesn't matter how much you believe in building these diverse teams and retaining individuals and developing individuals. We can believe in it all we want, but the reality is it's harder said than done, which is why this needs to be a topic of conversation here within an event like Demo Fest, but also within our own individual organizations, right? So again, part of why we wanted to have this conversation. So, all right, so let's go and move on to.
Oh, this is the fun part.
Yeah, this is, I think, where we get real, which is we're going to acknowledge some of our shortfalls. This has not always been easy. Like, as I said, we have fallen short of our goals individually, and we've shared this with each other, but we want to share it on this call today. And I'll start with a recruiting situation, which was, again, years ago, but the reality of the business needs and even thinking about the existing team and the amount of work that was sitting on the shoulders of so many of the team members in the organization. And we had like an opportunity to hire for someone that would help the organization, it helped the business ultimately. And I will just be honest that I kind of succumbed to the realities of the time pressure, the business pressure, the overwhelming responsibilities that laid on my shoulders, and I probably hired too quickly without making sure that I had a diverse set of candidates. And you'll also hear me say it's not just the diverse set of candidates that you need, but a diverse set of finalists, right? Which it really allows you to make some of the best choices out there. So I know that I've struggled a little bit when it comes to recruiting. There've been a couple of situations where when I think about the ramping or retaining individuals, I think I look back and I see opportunities where I did not recognize what the individual was going through or necessarily had a strong enough perspective on their point of view and their reality. And so I know that one of the things I try to do now more than ever is ask a lot of questions. And I try to go in instead of drive a playbook and have a structure and a process for getting something done. I try to have those conversations with individuals to understand their perspective and how they think about the business or how they think about a target or a goal or a process that we have in place. Because I think the more that I acknowledge that individuals have a different perspective, the better off we are as a leadership team and as an organization. Alfonso, I know you wanted to share a few stories also where you maybe fell short.
Yeah, I think the biggest one and is really around the recruiting. And when you think of what a recruiter does, their job is to get candidates in the pipeline. And there candidly are just a lot of male solution engineers out there that they can get in pipeline and move through the funnel. And so at the end of the day, you have to look at what can I be doing personally? Mm-hmm. And you have to sort through and take the time to we talked about the network, but LinkedIn, and I will dedicate time every month when I'm building pipeline to source diverse candidates, and not just myself, my team as well. And we'll have situations where I say, we've got to have a diverse pool. We have to do this. We're always going to hire the best candidate at the end of the day, but we have to have a diverse pool. And when you think about this recruiting, the one thing that comes to mind, not only do you have to have a diverse pool when you're hiring, we do what's known as a panel interview. I'm sure many of you are familiar with panel interviews. The panel has to be diverse as well.
Yes.
And so that was one of my shortfalls in the early days, candidly. We would get diverse candidates and we would show up with a very different view on the panel, right? And I lost a candidate. I know one candidate in particular that they were just like, I know you're saying that this is a great culture and diverse culture, but I'm not seeing it in my panel interview. Yep. And so that was a huge, huge learning for me. Yeah. And, again, continuous learning. And so, right.
I also remember at Salesforce, Alfonso, you and I and other peer leaders, we would have LinkedIn sessions where we'd all sit in a room and try to look through our own networks to help each other source candidates. So it wouldn't even be just for someone on my team, but if there was someone that, could I reach out to my network to help build up a pool of candidates for you, or vice versa, or any of the other peers that we had, right? So again, partnering with your peers, your leaders, your friends, your networks to really go out and find as many candidates as you can possibly find.
Yes, 100%. And I've texted you many times, hey, I have a role, all that good stuff. Right?
Well, you've asked me to share even at different companies when we've been at different companies. Will you share my open roles with your organization and your network on LinkedIn? And absolutely. And then the last one, and I know we've got a few more points to make, but we wanted to talk a little bit about relationships, although I think you've done a little bit so far. Anything else you'd like to add in terms of shortfalls when it came to relationships?
I think, it's around communication. It's going to be a little bit messy. And if you throw in digital communication as your only mechanism to communicate, it becomes even harder. And you throw a pandemic in there, a few other things mix it up and around. But really what I found is, picking up the phone and, if you're in a hybrid or a remote role, or for us at Sigma, we have a lot of in-office components as well. And so having that conversation face-to-face is so, so important, right? Mm-hmm. Or virtually face-to-face, and, not having it get lost in translation in some piece of digital communication. And what people experience in digital communication can so often be misread.
Yep.
And especially when you throw, again, the diversity component in.
Yep.
People speak differently, regionally even, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's just the big piece, right? And communication takes a long, long time. And that's the foundation of relationships. And
Yep.
so in this world where we're trying to do as much as we possibly can, as fast as we possibly can, I've learned personally that I need to slow down, right? And build those relationships and interact with folks, just not on the revenue, but actually interact on a personal level as well.
Yeah, so true. So true. All right, this is where we wanted to ask our third and fourth question. First and foremost, again, are we alone? Are we the only ones who have fallen short, or have you ever fallen short of your goals? And then if you have fallen short, what would you say are the reasons why? Do you think there's some unconscious bias at play, business priorities, pressures, different leadership philosophies, time pressures, what's in comfort zone? Maybe it's something altogether different than one of those reasons. But we'd love to open up the poll and hear from all of you in terms of where you are, in terms of, have you fallen short of your goals? All right, so we have at least one person out there who's willing to admit, like us, that they've fallen short of their goals. And okay. Okay, so one person who has not fallen short of their goals. And, please add in the chat any comments, ideas, suggestions. Again, Alfonso and I wanted this to be an open conversation around reasons why people are able to be successful, or those of us who are at times struggle with different aspects of building diverse teams, what those reasons are and how we can address them. So, okay, the next poll would be the reasons why you maybe have fallen short of your goals. And let's open up that poll. And I know we talked a little bit sometimes, clearly many organizations have invested in unbiased training, unconscious bias training. And then, I think I've also worked for organizations where it just frankly wasn't a priority. And that was disappointing. And then there have been other situations where different leaders had different styles around building diverse teams and diverse organizations. And then, as I said, one of my challenges in the past has been time pressure, right? Like that there's just not enough time always. It feels like it. The reality is there is, but it can feel like you don't have enough time to really source a true diverse candidate pool, or to spend the time, as you said, helping people build relationships, or personalizing or customizing training to individuals, recognizing what different people need at different times. So, all right, Looks like we've got a couple of votes there. Unconscious bias and time pressure are some of the top reasons. So we're not alone, again, Alfonso, in recognizing that we've had some challenges along those lines. And with that, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about our lessons learned. And we'll kind of run through this because I know these are a lot of things that we've already talked about, but we did want to call them out as being truly important aspects of what each of us can do, and how do we take the challenges we faced and turn them into lessons learned and actions we can take going forward. So we've talked a lot about this, leveraging your community, relationships with individuals like Alfonso and I have, where we can truly have honest, candid conversations and offer each other support, brainstorm ideas that we can do. But even within organizations, whether it's your peers, it's individuals, your leadership, it's joining ERG groups. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can leverage like-minded individuals who want to make this a priority.
Yes, indeed. And Sarah, we'll jump to number 3 because I want to spend a little time on number 3 because we've talked about getting personally involved. But, unconscious bias came up as one of the reasons, as one of the pitfalls. There are shortfalls. And one of the things that I've seen a lot of success with is creating and leveraging a hiring competency list of characteristics that we look for. And what it does is it removes the bias, right? Because we're always testing for curiosity. We're always testing for empathy, EQ. There's about 3 more that we test for as well. But in addition to that, we also use the exact same interview questions. Well, we may not always get through all of them, but it allows you, the playing field is leveled because I'm not asking about something that I love. I'm not asking about Formula One in the interview, right? Because I'll talk about
getting distracted by a conversation that can go down that path, right?
Exactly, right? And so we built that a number of years ago, and all the leaders use it on the team. And it's a way, and when we have individual contributors part of the panels as well, they have that same notion of those same set of competencies. And so it really helps you walk that walk.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that one. I wanted to encourage, I know I've learned this lesson. I mention it to pretty much everyone I talk to when I'm coaching or supporting people, but it is this idea of raise your hands. And I actually think our keynote speaker mentioned this as well. Get outside your comfort zone. I think you mentioned it too, Alfonso, earlier. Getting outside your comfort zone means raising your hand, and where you have an opportunity to have a voice and have a perspective, to share it. I'll give one anecdote that I got once from a leader who said, and this is back when we went into conference rooms and we went into the office, but when there's a conference room table, there used to be a little bit of a tendency for people to feel like, oh, I should sit along the wall and not at the conference table. There's not enough seats for everyone. And I'll never forget, she said, take your seat at the table, which means take your seat and offer your perspective. If you were invited to a meeting, you have every right to offer your point of view as everyone else in that room. So lean in and do that. So I know that's a big one for me. I also am a big believer in paying it forward. All of us who have had years of experiences and situations and heard advice or coach around advice, the more that we can share it with the next generation, we should be. And it's our responsibility to do that. So I'll let you tell a few more as well about some of the lessons you've learned.
Yes, and listen and learn 100%. So the stat I heard is there's 5 generations in the workplace today. 5. So with 5 generations, you're going to have a lot of different experiences, and you're going to have an opportunity to grow, right? And each generation can learn from the other at the end of the day, right? But you have to be a part of the conversation at the end of the day, right? You talked about having the seat at the table. It's also being a part of the conversation.
Yep.
Don't be a passenger, be an active participant, right? At the end of the day. And for me, it's about a good podcast. I have found so many great podcasts over the years that I can just listen to, and I'm constantly learning from them, all the different perspectives from all the leaders. And one of the things I tend to do, one of the podcasts I tend to listen to, they often have female CEOs and female CXOs. And so I spend a lot of time listening because that gives me that other perspective that I don't hear. In total, I've been in my career 30 years, and a lot of my leadership has been male, with the exception of you, Sarah. But a lot of males. So it just gives me another perspective. And then, it's invest in training, right? At the end of the day, in training, there's formal training internally, but also external, right? I'll give a plug to Salesforce here. Their Trailhead programs that they have out there, there's a lot of free learning just on diversity and those types of things that you can just sign up for and get free, or you can just Google or chat GTP it, and there's tons of content there. And so just taking in the information is just critically important. And then applying that information that you've taken in is the last mile.
Yeah, I would agree entirely. So with that, I think we want to talk a little bit about what we're doing now. We've acknowledged challenges, things we've done well, shortfalls, lessons learned. Now we wanted to share with all of you some of the personal commitments that we're both making currently. And I know you have 3 that you wanted to share quickly.
Yes. And at the end of the day, it's a balancing act. You heard me say it earlier. We always hire the best candidates. We're short on time, but when you're short on time and you have to move quickly, you have the ability to slow down after you've moved quickly. And I think that's the pivot that I've made, which is making diversity part of the process. It's just part of the hiring process, right? And it's a conversation that we have with one-on-ones. So with my leaders, it's a conversation I have with my uplines. It's a conversation that's just top of mind. And so if it's top of mind, it's going to be part of the process in general. True. And, you know, I'll continue to find some podcasts, right? I love The Grit. The Grit's a great one. And so if you haven't had listened to The Grit, I'll plug that one. But it's just finding information wherever you can find it.
Yeah, I love it. So I wanted to share my 3 also, which is just truly raising it as a topic of conversation everywhere. Everywhere I have an opportunity to bring it up, to make it a point. Even as I said in today's session, they asked me what, Consensus invited me to present and asked what topic would I want to talk about. I chose this topic, and I chose doing it with Alfonso because I think this matters so much to so many people, and I really wanted to make this a priority. But I also have talked a lot about skill development and how this needs to be a priority in order to enable our individuals to be first-line leaders, second-line leaders, to go into areas of specialty or deep technology knowledge. You talked about it as well, the training, making that a priority and allowing people to have, whether it's internal, external training, whatever it will do to help up-level their skills and make them, as I put it, how do you make yourself the best possible candidate when an opportunity presents itself? And then, like you, staying open to learning and doing more. We're never done evolving this or addressing this or making this a priority. And so we're constantly evolving, and I'm always looking for more insight and ideas from others around us. So with that, we wanted to hear from all of you. Do you feel like walking away from today's session that you've gotten some ideas that you can take back to your organization, right? That honestly, to us, that is the measure of success. If this was not only a good conversation to listen to and participate and engage in, but do you feel like you have some concrete ideas that you can take back to your organization? So with that, I think we've opened up the polls, and nice. All right. So it looks like we have some people agreeing that they've got some ideas to take back to their organizations. And that's wonderful to hear. I mean, as I said, Alfonso, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation, even making it a priority in your busy schedule, but to have this conversation and to make this a priority for all of us. Really appreciate it.
And, Sarah, there's one thing that comes to mind that I'll close with personally. If your candidate pool is not diversified, you typically don't have the best set of candidates in your pipeline. And that was a big, big learning for me because, again, back to the story that I started with, that diverse candidate that we hired and brought on really changed how we went about the business. And so moving fast, all that stuff, if it's not diversified, you may not have the best pipeline.
Yeah, so true. All right. I think, Kyle, thank you. Bringing you back on board. Do we have any questions?
We do. And yeah, thank you so much for an awesome session. And the one thing I wanted to call out was really cool. We had folks chiming in from all over the States, Europe, and shout out to Teresa all the way from Zimbabwe. So
I love
awesome.
that.
Love to hear that. Yeah, we had some great questions, and I think Rue also nailed it that with this post as well. Like, obviously you hire the best candidate, but you have to have a diverse pool.
Yes.
But yeah, we can jump into some Q&A. There's a couple questions. We'll start with a question actually from Rue. Difficult one because it's I personally know that this is something that's very important but difficult to measure. And his question is, how do you test for empathy and EQ?
It's a great question. And, we run a panel interview And before the panel interview, we actually allow the candidate to do a working session with either an individual contributor or the leader. And we give a lot of coaching, and we provide a fair amount of feedback. And what ends up happening there, do they take that feedback in, right? And do they adjust their presentation for the feedback that we've provided? And then we throw a few questions at them as well. And we ask about a scenario where they needed to have potentially empathy, right? With a customer or someone internally. And I'll have 20-year veterans that are like, I got it nailed. I got this job, SE of the year for the last 5 years. And it's like, but, in our space, we're selling this type of product. How would you go into a customer that may have 3 tools already? And if they're unable to respond to that, that's how we test for empathy. And then emotional intelligence, that's kind of a reading the room type thing, right? So really knowing if the answer to a question is yes, and they go on for 10 minutes, and then if we get one, we'll try a second one. And if they go on for 10 minutes there, when the answer is just a simple yes, I'm giving away a few trade secrets here. One of the questions we ask is, what is your superpower? And I sometimes have immediate responses from folks. And sometimes it takes, hey, no one's ever asked me that. And it takes 2 minutes for them to kind of formulate their superpower. And it's like, if you're a professional and you've been doing this for quite some time, you typically know what you're really good at, right? I know what I'm amazing at. I know where I can improve. And same probably for you as well, Sarah, right? So those are techniques that we've used to do that.
Yeah. I'd say it's very similar in our interview process. It's asking a lot of behavioral and situational examples and listening for, and how did you coach your team, or how did you interact with the customer, and asking for actual language that they used.
Examples, like true examples. Yes.
You've got to drill in, and then you've got to drill into the examples, because that's, I think, where you'll actually hear the details of whether or not somebody's demonstrating empathy and EQ in how they interact with people. Yeah. Great question.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we can jump into a question from Teresa, which is, and I think we addressed this towards the end, but anything else you'd add, or what are you doing differently to get diverse candidates now? In reverse, how best can we as candidates showcase that we be a valuable asset to a team?
Yeah. So the first one is, yes, we get, Alfonso and I've said, we get personally involved in sourcing, in reaching out to a network to get as many diverse candidates into a pool. I also hold myself to a standard of having diverse finalists. So it's not enough to have a pool, but when you get down to a group of 2-3 finalists, I'm not satisfied unless that finalist group is also diverse. And then I think, now I'm forgetting the next part of the question.
Yeah, I think it's, as a candidate, like in the reverse, like as a candidate,
yes,
how do we best show up ultimately? And really what that boils down to, and it's going to sound really cliche and simple, prepare. If you're going to go into an interview for a company, it's not just about knowing about the role and how you would perform in the role. You should know the company's mission. If they are public, you should have read through their 10K, and how you can impact that business with your unique skill set. So it is really, really about preparing. Every person you're going to meet with, you should have gone to their LinkedIn profile, understand who they are, because again, we talked about this notion of relationships. And so if you find some synergy in their LinkedIn profile, there may be some passion that they have that you have, and that's going to play well in that conversation. But it's really about preparation. And I'll close with this. If you're interviewing, again, getting outside the comfort zone, be comfortable sharing your presentation with your colleagues, or dry running it with your colleagues before you go into that interview, or reaching out to someone you know at that company and sharing your presentation with them. True story, by the way. And it just sets you up so much more for success. And I often ask people, like, how long did you prepare for that interview? And I've heard anything from, an hour to 20 hours. And so you have to know where that sweet spot is. but showing up prepared and really interested in showing that organization that you want this job and you're going to put your stamp on the business and drive value, I think is critically important.
Yeah. I'll add to that is that, and this is very much, very, very, very much, I'll caveat a generalization, but sometimes men look at a job description and say, I can do that. And women can often look at a job description and say, I've never done that. Right. So I won't apply because I've never done that, versus the I can do that, even though I've never done it. And that's where I suggest people think about the job description and identify places where you may not have done that, but have you ever built or demonstrated the skills that would showcase that you could do that? Right. And it is everything from learning a brand new technology. Sometimes individuals will feel like, well, I can't possibly work for that company as a leader because I don't know their software. I don't know the ins and outs of their product. I've been a leader at my company because I grew up through an SE role to an SE leader role, but I can't go into a company that I don't know their product. And the reality is you learned the product at your last company. So you've demonstrated your ability to learn new products. So you can be confident that you will learn a new product at a new company, even if it's something you've never done. Right. And so I coach people to have that conversation when you're thinking about making yourself a candidate for a role.
It's okay to get a little bit over your skis. Again,
that too.
Earlier, we are all constantly learning, right? And so if you have the ability and the aptitude to learn, many leaders will be willing to take the chance on someone who just has that grit.
Yep.
All
right. I want to pull up. There's one more question.
Yeah, and I want to put you on the spot as an SC to answer a complex question very quickly, so we could get to the next session. But question about retention and growth. How are you measuring today? And I'm also calling out that I'm launching a survey as well for those who attended today.
Oh, terrific!
Yeah,
and I call out to Dee, who's on my team here at Google, and love. Thank you for joining and being part of this session. Yeah. I think there's a number of ways that we measure retention. It is as simple as how many voluntary departures do you have in an organization? And in many of the companies that I've worked with and for, my goal has been to have less than 5% voluntary attrition on an organization. So that's the simplest way you measure it. But how do you measure? But you want to be able to impact that before somebody is giving notice and saying that the organization didn't meet my needs, my goals. I wasn't able to expand my career. You want to catch it before it gets to that place. So I believe that it really needs to happen in terms of, having skip line interview, one-on-ones, to having surveys, to putting together programs. We talked about enablement programs, things like that. Yeah. And really getting people's feedback on, are we meeting some of their needs with regards to skill development, career progression, culture, all these aspects that matter so much to so many people.
Yeah. And from a growth perspective, it's all about the career ladder. Obviously, Google has a career ladder. Sigma, we just rolled out our career ladder not too long ago. And the way I measure it is just really simply internal promotions.
There you go.
Are we building a path for people to be able to grow? We talk about the adventure seeker who bounces around the company, or the deep diver who becomes the architect, right? Or the mountain climber who becomes the leader. And so I just measure it simply around, are we promoting from within?
I love it. Kyle, I think you have some final steps.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And thanks all. Quick couple housekeeping items. Just calling out that we are very excited to be bringing DemoFest on the road again as DemoFest X. We had a great time in San Francisco in February earlier this year, and we can't wait to go back to London and NYC again later this year. You can register to join us at either of these events through demofest.com or at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We also encourage you to stop by our expo hall to visit our premier partners at DemoFest. Remember, there is no transfer of money involved in this event, so all of our partners have gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event a success for all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this session, and thank you to Sarah and Alfonso for the valuable insight and knowledge. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions. You will automatically be pushed to the session in your track, and you can switch tracks or sessions by toggling to the agenda tab at the top of your screen. We'll see you soon. And again, thank you, Sarah and Alfonso.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks to everybody who joined us today. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.